Hi, everybody. My name is Abe Flanigan, and I am one of the graduate student co-chairs for the Studying in Self-Regulated Learning SIG's Graduate Student Committee. I'm today speaking with Dr. Ken Kiewra from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln as part of our Advice from Productive Scholars video series. So, Dr. Kiewra, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Abe. It's an honor.
Yeah, thank you. And we'd like to start off by allowing you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I'm from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. I'm Department of Educational Psychology. Our program is Developmental and Learning Sciences. A little background about my research area. I started many years ago investigating note-taking, the optimal way that students should take notes and review notes. That transitioned to looking at the nature of those notes, the organization of those notes, the study of graphic organizers. And from there, I started looking at what I call the SOAR learning method, also the teaching method, which involves selecting, organizing, associating, and regulating information. So that was a model, a broader model that incorporated my note-taking research as select, my graphic organizer research as organized, but then went further as to how students should be preparing for exams. Something else is, in addition to that teaching and learning kind of research, I also investigate talent development, the nurturing of talent. How do young kids get to be so good so fast? And in particular, I'm interested in the roles that parents play in talent development. Okay.
All right. And then do you have any ongoing projects that you're currently working on?
Well, on the note-taking side, I'm looking at laptop versus longhand notes. Very popular topic, although it's really under-researched at this time. So looking at what's better, whether students should take notes via longhand or using those laptops. On the talent side of things, I have a project going called Prodigies of the Prairie, where we're looking at outstanding Nebraska youth, talented youth, and how they got to be so good so fast in a variety of domains like swimming, rodeo, baton twirling. And with that, not only are we publishing an article, but we're also creating a set of documentaries that we hope will have some widespread appeal.
Cool. All right. And could you describe your history with the SIG? It just occurred to me that you've had a pretty long history with the SIG from its early days. Could you describe that history?
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I was at the original meeting in California in the San Francisco Bay Area when William Rower and John Thomas invited a group of us from around the country to meet and talk about self-regulated learning and academic studying. And it was really from that meeting that the SIG was born. I think a few years into the SIG, I was the SIG chairperson and the SIG program director and the like.
All right. And since that day, obviously the SIG has continued to grow and add new members, and you've since, continued your really productive research career. And one of the points of this video series is to help provide tips or guidance to graduate students so that they can become productive as well. And so would you be able to provide any tips that you think would be useful for graduate students that they could apply in their own lives, their own research practices, so that they could one day become just as productive as yourself and other leaders in the SIG?
So with these tips, I can draw some of these ideas from my own work, my own processes, if you will. But I've also studied outstanding scholars, productive educational psychologists, and certainly have learned a lot from them. So this will sort of be a compilation of what I've learned in that research and maybe some of my own thoughts and processes.
Okay.
The first would be carve out time. They always say that when you get a paycheck, before you start paying the light bill, you got to pay yourself first. You got to get something out of that paycheck. Well, I think that's true with your day. And so I always advise students and budding scholars to carve out time each day to work on your research and on your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Productive scholars tend to have a rhythm. They find a rhythm that works for them, whether it's working in the early mornings or late at nights. They find a usable, workable rhythm. My rhythm is, number one, to try to schedule my classes for once a week rather than 2 or 3 times a week. Try to schedule them in the evening. So my schedule this semester, for example, my teaching schedule is to teach one course Tuesday evening and another course Wednesday evening. Most of my meetings occur during the day on Tuesday, and that virtually gives me the rest of the time to work on whatever I choose to work on in terms of, my scholarship. And I tend to work at home where I am now, where I'm less interrupted, and I think I can just, be more productive in this environment. So the first tip is, carve out time and space for you to be productive. Make that a priority. A second tip would be to stay focused on 1 or 2 areas throughout your career. Some people try to be a jack of all trades. They have their hand in this and this and this and this, and they never get known or acknowledged for their work in any one area. One of the people we interviewed recently, as you know, was Alexander Rankel from the University of Freiburg. And his advice was to get yourself known in an area, get your name attached to a particular research area. For me, I guess that's largely been note-taking, and maybe now it's hopefully talent development. But I think that's important rather than, be bouncing all over the place. Try to carve out a niche in one area that you're passionate about. A third is collaborate. Many hands make light work. I think that people can do better work when they're working with others and they get their feedback, their assistance. And as Mike Presley once said in an interview when we were talking to him as a productive scholar, it's simply more enjoyable to have people around and to work with people than to, be doing this alone in the old smoke-filled room as it is. One more piece, I guess the fourth tip here is sweat the small stuff. By that I mean, not everybody is going to be or even want to be a research rock star, but I think everybody can be a dynamite professor. So I think that once you commit to something, be it something big like a publication, a research study in the Journal of Educational Psychology, to much smaller things like being a member of a committee or writing a reference letter on somebody's behalf, or like I did last week, a 5-minute presentation for a group. I think whatever it is you commit to, I think you should do with all your heart and all your soul and just make it the best damn work, the best damn 5-minute presentation you can. I just think it's incumbent upon us to do that. I've seen too many times when people have shirked their duties, and I think all the research publications in the world can't cover up for that. I think people need to be accountable, and I think they should have a passion for all aspects of their job, not just for the research productivity. Having said that, I would just add this: don't be afraid to say no. Don't commit to everything. Commit to the things that are important, the things that you want to do, the things that are going to advance the field, the things to help out your department and your program, and do those things. But, you can't say yes to everything. You'll just be, run too thin.
Perfect. Thanks. That's really great advice. As for myself, being a budding scholar in the field, I know that the journey from where I am now to where I'd like to be seems like a really daunting path to undertake. And so having these really, clear suggestions and guidance, I know for me, it's very helpful and encouraging to know that, maybe the path from here to there isn't as arduous or as daunting as it might seem. And so, so from my perspective, I really appreciate that advice, and I'm sure all of the other graduate students in the SIG will feel just the same way. So,
yeah, having said that, let me add one quick thing. When I interviewed Michael Presley, who's clearly one of the most productive educational psychologists of all time, he tells the story about this initiation, and these young boys are being led to the edge of a cliff, and the tribal leader tells them to jump, and they're all recoiling in fear. It's daunting, and he says, "Go ahead and jump. It's not as far as it looks." And Presley said, pretty much the same thing. When he was in graduate school, he couldn't imagine being one of these, highly productive people. But what he said is, now that I'm here, it really wasn't as far as it seemed at the time. So that would be, a great parting message, is that, being whatever you want to be, whether it's a productive scholar or just an outstanding professor, really is within the palm of everybody's hands. You and everyone else, control their own destiny based on the kinds of decisions you make and how hard you're willing to work.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's great, encouraging advice.
Good.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that you think would be important for the graduate students in the SIG to know or to apply in their lives?
Kind of have fun with this. I think I've always been somebody that's carved out fun projects. I mentioned the Prodigies of the Prairie documentaries. That's been great fun. I'm working on a book now on how to parent talent. That's wonderful fun. I was once an expert witness, this is just crazy, in a trial that involved the Securities and Exchange Commission, who brought a lawsuit against a major energy company in the United States. Who would think that note-taking would become involved in all of that? But there's just been those sorts of fun things. So again, it's not all about the papers and the publications. This is just the most wonderful job, and I think I'd advise people just to have fun with it. Follow your heart.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your experiences with us today. And for all the graduate students who are watching, on behalf of myself and Zahia, the other graduate student co-chair for the committee, thank you for watching and for all that you do for the SIG. And best of luck as all of you decide to pursue your careers as academics and pursue your own talents and interests. Thank you, Dr. Kiewra.
Thanks for having me, Abe.